The afternoon light filtered through the grimy windows of Montreal's Peel subway station, casting fragmented streaks of sunlight onto the bustling platform below. It was a Friday, prime rush hour, and the station was alive with the frenzied energy of commuters eager to start their weekend. The steady hum of conversations, footsteps, and the occasional laughter of a group of teenagers filled the air, blending with the metallic screech of incoming trains and the rhythmic announcements over the intercom. "Attention, the next train arrives in 2 minutes," echoed the automated voice, though it was barely audible over the din. The scent of city life mingled here in layers. Freshly brewed coffee from a nearby kiosk, the faint tang of subway grease, and a hint of the damp, earthen smell that only underground spaces seemed to hold. Near the far end of the platform stood an eclectic mix of street performers. A man with a scruffy beard and a guitar strapped across his chest strummed out a raspy rendition of Hallelujah, his voice carrying a melancholic beauty that made a few passers-by pause. Just beside him, a mime in a battered beret froze mid-dramatic pose, watching a toddler's wide-eyed fascination before breaking character to grin at the child. Further down, a group of breakdancers drew a small crowd with their dizzying flips and headspins, their boombox blaring an upbeat hip-hop rhythm. But the most compelling sound that day wasn't from the seasoned performers vying for attention. It came from a boy standing a few feet away from the main thoroughfare, his presence quiet yet magnetic. His name was Julian, a wiry 12-year-old with an old soul, evident in the way his hazel eyes held a world of emotions beyond his years. Julian's appearance was unassuming, worn sneakers, a faded jean jacket, and a mop of unruly curls. But his voice was a revelation. Julian clutched a battered second-hand microphone connected to a tiny, portable speaker. Beside him, a cardboard sign read, "Help a future musician chase his dream. Merci beaucoup." He had chosen to sing Celine Dion's Because You Loved Me, a song he'd practiced countless times in his tiny bedroom in a working-class neighborhood on the city's outskirts. His voice soared above the noise, clear and full of raw emotion, pulling at the heartstrings of anyone who cared to listen. He sang not for money, though his guitar case held a modest collection of coins, but for the sheer joy of expressing himself. Music had been his escape, his anchor, ever since his father, a factory worker, had passed away a year ago. One commuter, a young woman named Anais, stopped mid-step as Julian's voice reached her ears. She had been rushing to meet friends, but now stood transfixed, her hand gripping the strap of her bag. "That's incredible," she murmured, fishing out her phone to record him. Around her, more people began to pause, their harried schedules forgotten for a moment. In this serendipitous moment, none other than Celine Dion herself walked into the station. She had chosen a rare day off to enjoy a stroll in her hometown, blending into the crowd in a chic yet understated trench coat and sunglasses. Accompanied only by her assistant, she carried a coffee to go, the warm steam curling against the cool air of the subway. As she descended the escalator, Celine caught the tail end of Julian's soaring chorus. She stopped abruptly, her ears tuning in like a radio dial locking onto a favorite station. For a moment, she stood completely still, letting the boy's voice wash over her. "Do you hear that?" she asked her assistant, her voice tinged with wonder. Her assistant nodded, but Celine had already moved forward, drawn to Julian like a moth to a flame. The crowd around him had grown now, and she wove through them with ease, positioning herself where she could see him clearly. Her heart caught as she watched him sing, his eyes closed, his small hands gripping the microphone like it was his lifeline. As Julian reached the final note, his voice cracked ever so slightly, not from a lack of skill, but from the emotion he poured into it. The crowd erupted into applause, breaking the spell that had held them captive. Julian blinked, momentarily disoriented by the attention, but a shy smile tugged at his lips as he thanked the onlookers with a polite nod. And then he saw her. Celine stepped forward, slowly removing her sunglasses. "That was beautiful," she said, her voice soft but firm, carrying the weight of her own legendary career. Julian's jaw dropped, the microphone slipping from his fingers as he stared at her in disbelief. You're Celine Dion," he stammered, his cheeks flushing crimson. Celine chuckled warmly. "Yes, I am. And you, young man, have an incredible gift." The crowd, realizing who had just spoken, murmured excitedly. their phones now capturing not just Julian, but the interaction between him and the global icon. Celine crouched slightly to meet Julian's wide-eyed gaze. "What's your name?" she asked. "Gee, Julian," he managed, his voice barely a whisper. "Well, Julian, I have to tell you, hearing you sing one of my songs just made my day. No, my whole week," she said, smiling. "Can I sing a little with you?" Julian's breath caught in his throat. "With me?" "Yes, with you," Celine replied, her smile widening. "Would you mind if we shared a song for these lovely people?" As Julian nodded, the crowd erupted into cheers. Celine leaned closer, whispering to him, "Let's do the prayer. You know it?" Julian nodded eagerly. It was a song he knew well, one he often practiced at home because he loved how it showcased both power and tenderness. The introduction ended as Julian's life teetered on the brink of something extraordinary, with the crowd, Celine Dion, and the subway's electric atmosphere awaiting what would undoubtedly become an unforgettable moment. The duet between Julian and Celine Dion began with a hush falling over the bustling subway station. The crowd, initially a mix of commuters and casual onlookers, now stood still, their focus unwavering. Celine leaned in close to Julian, offering an encouraging nod. The boy, his nerves on edge but bolstered by her presence, gripped his microphone tightly. He could barely believe what was happening, but he was determined to make the moment count. Celine started, her voice filling the station with a divine resonance that seemed to quiet even the noisy subway trains. Her first notes of the prayer floated through the air, creating a serene bubble of sound amid the chaos. Julian joined in, his voice trembling at first but quickly gaining strength. Together, their harmony was pure magic, a blend of Celine's polished, world-class vocals and Julian's raw, unrefined talent. The crowd erupted into cheers mid-song, their amazement palpable. Phones were raised high as people recorded the surreal moment, their faces illuminated by the glow of their screens. Julian stole a glance at Celine, who smiled warmly, silently encouraging him to keep going. The connection between them was almost palpable, as if their shared love for music had created a bridge spanning their vastly different lives. Unbeknownst to them, one of the recordings was being live-streamed by Anais, the young woman who had first stopped to listen to Julian earlier. Her stream quickly gained traction as viewers tuned in, sharing the video across social media platforms. "OMG, Celine Dion is singing with a boy in the subway," one commenter exclaimed. Within minutes, the video was being retweeted and reposted worldwide, with hashtags like #CelineandJulie and #SubwayDuet trending globally. By the time Julian and Celine reached the song's climactic finish, a thunderous applause erupted, reverberating off the subway walls. Tears glistened in the eyes of many in the audience, touched by the beauty of the impromptu performance. Julian, panting slightly from the emotional intensity, couldn't stop smiling. For a boy who had only ever dreamed of moments like this, reality had outdone even his wildest fantasies. As the applause died down, Celine took Julian by the hand and turned to the crowd. "This young man," she said, her voice warm and filled with pride, "has an extraordinary gift. Julian, you remind me why I fell in love with music in the first place." The crowd roared again, chanting Julian's name, making him blush furiously. Celine crouched slightly to meet Julian at eye level. "I'd love to talk to you and your family, if that's okay," she said softly, her sincerity evident in her tone. Julian nodded quickly, unable to find words through his overwhelming emotions. "Perfect," Celine said with a smile. She turned back to the crowd. "Thank you, everyone, for making this moment so special. And remember, talent like Julian's deserves to be celebrated." The crowd dispersed slowly, many people stopping to congratulate Julian or slip coins into his guitar case, now overflowing with bills. Celine's assistant, Caroline, discreetly ushered Julian and his mother, Marianne, who had been standing nearby with tears streaming down her face, to a quieter corner of the station. Seated at a small cafe near the subway exit, Celine, Julian, Marianne, and Caroline talked over steaming mugs of hot chocolate. Marianne, a nurse who had worked tirelessly to support Julian's musical aspirations, was still in shock. "I can't believe this is happening," she kept repeating, her voice trembling with gratitude. Celine reached across the table to hold Marianne's hand. "Your son is remarkable," she said earnestly. "I see a passion in him that's rare, even in the industry." Turning to Julian, she added, You remind me of myself when I was your age, hungry, full of dreams, and unafraid to share your heart through music." Julian, still dazed, managed a small laugh. "I was so nervous. I thought I was going to forget the words." "But you didn't," Celine said, her eyes sparkling. "And that's what matters." After their conversation, Celine leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Julian," she began, "I want to help you nurture your talent. If you're interested, I'd love to invite you to one of my upcoming concerts. You could perform with me or even just come backstage to see how everything works." Julian's eyes widened in disbelief. "You mean it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Celine laughed softly. "Of course I do, and that's not all. I'll introduce you to some people in the industry who can guide you as you grow. Your voice deserves to be heard, and I'd like to help you make that happen." Marianne covered her mouth, overcome with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to us," she said, her voice breaking. Celine placed a hand on Julian's shoulder. "You've got a bright future ahead of you. Stay humble, work hard, and never lose that passion." By the time Julian and Marianne left the cafe, their lives had been irrevocably changed. Julian held onto a small slip of paper with Celine's personal contact information, clutching it as if it were a golden ticket. His heart raced with excitement, his mind already brimming with possibilities. Back at the station, Carolyn helped Celine navigate the swarm of reporters who had somehow gotten wind of the viral moment. "You've done something incredible today," Caroline said as they climbed into a car waiting outside. Celine smiled, watching the city blur past the window. "I didn't do it for the cameras," she replied. "I did it because that boy reminded me of why I started this journey. It's about the music and the connection it creates. That's what matters." As night fell over Montreal, Julian's duet with Celine continued to dominate social media. News outlets picked up the story with headlines like "Celine Dion discovers a rising star in a subway station" and "Heartwarming duet goes viral." Clips of the performance amassed millions of views, drawing attention from music producers and fans around the world. Julian's school friends flooded his phone with texts, and his teachers planned to feature the video in Monday's assembly. Even local radio stations began playing snippets of his performance, marveling at the boy who had captured the heart of a global superstar. Later that evening, as Julian lay in bed, his mind replayed the events of the day like a film. The subway, the crowd, Celine Dion, everything felt surreal. But when he closed his eyes, it wasn't the applause or the cameras he focused on. It was the warmth in Celine's voice when she said, "You remind me of myself." For the first time in his young life, Julian felt seen, not just by the world but by someone who understood the transformative power of music. And as he drifted off to sleep, he knew this was just the beginning of his story. The days following Julian's performance in the subway were a whirlwind. His life, once defined by quiet evenings in a modest apartment with his mother, now felt like it had been thrust onto a grand stage. The duet with Celine Dion had been recorded on more phones than he could count, and within hours, the video had spread like wildfire across social media platforms. At first, Julian didn't fully grasp what was happening. His friend Alex burst into their apartment one morning, holding his phone up as if it were a trophy. "Dude, you're viral!" he shouted, showing Julian a montage of videos and headlines praising the subway performance. Julian's heart raced as he watched. Clips of him and Celine singing had been set to dramatic music, overlaid with captions like "The boy with the voice of an angel" and "Celine's surprise duet that stole the internet's heart." Comments poured in from all over the world. "Who is this kid? Julian needs a record deal now. This is why I believe in the power of music." Julian sat down, his hands trembling slightly. "This is insane," he murmured, his voice tinged with disbelief. Marianne, his mother, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Insane or not, mon fils, this is happening, and you're ready for it." True to her word, Celine Dion wasted no time in reaching out. Her assistant called Julian the day after the video went viral, inviting him and Marianne to meet at a studio in downtown Montreal. As Julian stepped into the recording studio for the first time, he was overwhelmed by its grandeur. The walls were lined with framed records, platinum, gold, and everything in between. It was a testament to years of hard work, passion, and talent. Celine greeted them warmly, her presence as magnetic as ever. "Welcome to my little haven," she said, gesturing around the room. "This is where I dream, experiment, and sometimes even fail. But it's all part of the process." Julian laughed nervously. "It's incredible. I can't believe I'm here." Celine smiled knowingly. "I said the same thing when I first walked into a studio. But you belong here, Julian. Trust me." She invited him to sing a song of his choice, and though his nerves threatened to choke him, Julian eventually settled on Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. He poured his heart into the performance, his voice soaring and trembling in equal measure. When he finished, Celine clapped, her expression one of genuine awe. "That was beautiful," she said. "You have a gift, Julian, and gifts like yours deserve to be shared with the world." She then offered advice that would stick with Julian for years to come. "The world will try to shape you, to fit you into a mold. Don't let them. Stay true to yourself, to your voice, and to your story. That's what people connect with, authenticity." Under Celine's mentorship, Julian's life began to change in ways he had never imagined. Local venues clamored for him to perform, and he found himself singing at charity events, school assemblies, and even community fundraisers. Each performance was a stepping stone, building his confidence and expanding his reach. One of the most surreal moments came when Celine invited Julian to perform alongside her at a sold-out concert at the Bell Center in Montreal. The weeks leading up to the concert were a blur of rehearsals, media interviews, and late-night phone calls with Alex, who remained Julian's biggest cheerleader. "You're going to kill it," Alex would say, his voice brimming with excitement. "I'm telling everyone I know to watch this." The night of the concert, Julian stood backstage, his heart pounding in his chest. The roar of the crowd was deafening, and the energy in the air was electric. Dressed in a tailored suit Celine had gifted him, Julian felt both exhilarated and terrified. Celine found him pacing nervously and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Breathe, Julian," she said softly. "It's okay to be scared. I still get nervous before every show. But the moment you step out there, you'll feel it, the connection with the audience. Trust yourself." When the time came, Julian stepped onto the stage to a thunderous ovation. The lights were blinding at first, but as his eyes adjusted, he saw the sea of faces before him, each one eagerly awaiting his performance. Together, Julian and Celine performed The Prayer, their voices intertwining in perfect harmony. The crowd erupted into applause, many moved to tears by the raw emotion of the performance. Julian felt a sense of belonging he had never known before, as if he had finally found his purpose. The concert duet was recorded by countless fans, and within hours, clips flooded the internet. Major media outlets picked up the story, labeling Julian as a rising star. News anchors marveled at the serendipity of the subway encounter and the boy's undeniable talent. Julian's social media accounts became inundated with messages from fans, industry professionals, and even celebrities. His inbox was a mix of heartfelt letters from people inspired by his story and business proposals from producers eager to work with him. One particular message stood out, a heartfelt letter from a young girl named Sophie, who wrote about how Julian's story had inspired her to pursue her own dream of becoming a singer. "If Julian can do it, maybe I can too," she wrote. Julian showed the letter to Marianne, tears welling up in his eyes. "This is why I want to do this," he said, "to inspire people, just like Celine inspired me." As Julian's star rose, Celine found herself reflecting on their fateful encounter in the subway. One evening, as she sat in her home, she watched clips of Julian's performances online. His voice, still raw but filled with undeniable passion, brought a smile to her face. Caroline, her longtime assistant, entered the room with a cup of tea. "He's doing so well, isn't he?" she remarked, watching over Celine's shoulder. Celine nodded, her expression thoughtful. "He reminds me of myself when I was starting out, so full of dreams yet unsure of the path ahead." Caroline smiled. "You've done something incredible for him, Celine. You gave him the chance of a lifetime." Celine shook her head. "All I did was open a door. Julian had the courage to walk through it, and that's what makes him special." She leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on the screen. "Music has always been about connection for me. It's a bridge between hearts. And Julian, he's building those bridges now. Watching him is like seeing a reflection of everything I love about this art." The thought filled her with a profound sense of purpose. In helping Julian, she had not only reignited her own passion for music, but also affirmed her belief in the power of kindness and mentorship. 2 years had passed since that unforgettable subway encounter, yet every time Julian thought back to it, he felt the same awe and disbelief. Life had transformed in ways he could scarcely have imagined. As he prepared backstage at the Grand Bell Center in Montreal, Julian marveled at how his journey had brought him to this moment. The same boy who once sang to rushing commuters was now about to perform for thousands of fans who had followed his rise with admiration and curiosity. Backstage, the air buzzed with activity. Technicians moved swiftly, ensuring the sound levels were perfect, while crew members adjusted lights and gave last-minute directions. Julian sat in a quiet corner of the green room, strumming his guitar lightly to calm his nerves. His manager, Sophie, hovered nearby, a clipboard in hand and an encouraging smile on her face. "Are you ready, Julian?" Sophie asked, her tone gentle but tinged with excitement. "This is your night." Julian nodded, though a wave of anxiety bubbled in his chest. "It still feels surreal," he admitted. "A part of me is waiting to wake up and find myself back in the subway." Sophie placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've earned every bit of this. And remember, you're not alone out there. You've got your talent, your story, and someone very special watching from the front row." The mention of Celine Dion brought a flicker of warmth to Julian's face. Over the past 2 years, she had been a guiding force, offering advice, encouragement, and most importantly, belief in his potential. Tonight, she was here not just as a mentor, but as someone who had become like family. Meanwhile, the Bell Center was alive with anticipation. Fans of all ages filled the seats, their excitement palpable as they waited for Julian to take the stage. Many held signs with messages like, "From the subway to the stars," and "Merci Celine." The story of Julian's rise, fueled by talent and kindness, had resonated deeply, inspiring countless people to pursue their own dreams. Among the crowd, Celine sat quietly, her presence understated but unmistakable. Dressed elegantly, she blended in as much as a global icon could, her focus entirely on Julian. She glanced at the stage setup, a proud smile playing on her lips. This night was as much a celebration of Julian's success as it was a testament to the power of serendipity and mentorship. The house lights dimmed, and the murmur of the crowd gave way to a hush of anticipation. A single spotlight illuminated the stage as Julian stepped into view, guitar in hand. The roar that greeted him was deafening, a wave of sound that momentarily stunned him. He paused, letting the moment sink in before approaching the microphone. "Bonsoir, Montreal," Julian began, his voice steady but laden with emotion. 2 years ago, I was just another face in the subway singing for anyone who would listen. I never imagined I'd be standing here tonight, and I have all of you and one very special person to thank for that." The audience erupted into applause, and Julian smiled, his confidence bolstered by their support. He began with an acoustic rendition of Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, his voice carrying a depth of emotion that silenced the room. The haunting melody filled the space, each note a tribute to the journey that had brought him here. As the final chords of Hallelujah faded, Julian looked out into the audience, his eyes searching for a familiar face. "There's someone here tonight who changed my life forever," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Celine Dion, would you join me on stage?" The crowd erupted into cheers as Celine rose from her seat, her poise and grace evident as she made her way to the stage. She hugged Julian warmly before taking her place beside him. Together, they performed "To Love You More," the song that had first united them. Their voices intertwined seamlessly, a blend of raw talent and polished artistry. The crowd, mesmerized, erupted into a standing ovation as the duet ended, their cheers echoing through the vast space. After the duet, Julian addressed the crowd again. "Celine taught me that music isn't just about notes or melodies, it's about connection. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and for that I'll always be grateful." He paused, his gaze meeting hers. "Celine, this next song is for you." Julian launched into an original composition titled "The Light You Gave Me," a heartfelt ballad that captured the essence of their journey. The lyrics spoke of chance encounters, the power of belief, and the beauty of paying kindness forward. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including Celine's. After the show, Julian and Celine shared a quiet moment backstage. The buzz of the audience lingered faintly in the background, but here it was just the two of them. "You were incredible tonight," Celine said, her voice filled with pride. "Watching you up there, I saw not just an artist but someone who truly understands what music is all about." Julian smiled, his gratitude evident. "I wouldn't be here without you. You didn't just change my life. You gave me the tools to believe in myself." Celine placed a hand on his shoulder. "And now it's your turn to inspire others. Your story has already touched so many. Keep sharing it, keep singing, and never forget where you started." A year later, Julian found himself on an even bigger stage, this time at the Grammys. Nominated for Best New Artist, he was a far cry from the boy who had once sung in a subway station. Yet, as he accepted the award, his speech reflected the same humility and gratitude that had carried him through his journey. "I want to dedicate this award to Celine Dion," he said, his voice steady. "You saw something in me when no one else did. Your kindness changed my life, and I hope to carry that same spirit forward in everything I do." In the audience, Celine beamed with pride, her heart full as she watched Julian take his rightful place among the stars. For her, the greatest reward wasn't the duet, the viral video, or even the accolades. It was knowing that she had helped someone discover their light and share it with the world. As Julian's story spread, it became a symbol of hope and possibility. News outlets and social media buzzed with the tale of how a chance encounter had changed not just one life, but countless others. Julian used his platform to mentor aspiring artists, paying forward the kindness that had lifted him out of obscurity. For Celine, the experience reaffirmed her belief in the transformative power of music. In interviews, she often reflected on that subway encounter, emphasizing the importance of lifting others up when the opportunity arises. And so, Julian's journey became more than a personal triumph. It became a testament to the enduring magic of human connection, a reminder that even the smallest moments of kindness can create ripples that touch lives far beyond our own.